The dust motes danced in the slanted afternoon light of my attic, each one a tiny, forgotten story. Up here, under the eaves of the house Frank and I built with our own hands, 60 years of life were carefully packed away in trunks and boxes. My hip was giving me a bit of trouble today, but the familiar ache was a dull companion compared to the sharp pang of loneliness that sometimes ambushed me in the quiet hours. I ran a hand over a cedar chest, its surface smooth and cool beneath my wrinkled skin. Inside lay the most precious textile of my life, a ghost of a girl I once was, wrapped in layers of acid-free paper. My wedding dress. The sharp ring of the telephone downstairs jolted me from my reverie. I made my way down the creaking stairs, my hand gripping the familiar oak banister. It was my daughter, Carol. "Mom, just checking in. How are you feeling?" Her voice was warm, but had the hurried edge of someone squeezing a call in between work and her next errand. "I'm just fine, dear. Pot roast is in the slow cooker. Smells like heaven." I didn't mention the attic pilgrimage. Some things were too private, even for a daughter. "Oh, that sounds lovely. Listen, I have some wonderful news. Jessica and Kevin are here with me, and they have something to tell you." There was a shuffle, and then my granddaughter's bright, bubbly voice, a voice that always sounded like it was smiling, came on the line. "Grandma Ellie, are you sitting down?" "For you, Jessica, I'm always sitting down," I chuckled. "We're engaged. Kevin proposed last night. It was so romantic. He did it at the botanical gardens with twinkle lights everywhere." A genuine warmth spread through my chest, chasing away the earlier chill. "Oh, my darling girl, that's the most wonderful news I've heard all year. Congratulations to you both." "Thanks, Grandma. We're so excited. We're already thinking about the wedding, and that's kind of why we're calling. I was wondering, you know that box in the attic? The one you told me about? With your dress?" My breath caught. I had told her about it years ago on a rainy afternoon when she was a teenager fascinated by old love stories. I'd described the silk, the seed pearls, the way it felt to wear it as I walked toward her grandfather. "Yes, I know the one," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Well," she continued, her voice brimming with excitement, "I was thinking, could I see it? I have an idea, a really, really special idea, for my wedding. Can we come over this weekend, Mom and me?" My heart swelled. An idea for her wedding? Could it be? The thought that my dress, the symbol of my perfect day, my union with Frank, might live again, might walk down another aisle, was almost too beautiful to bear. It felt like a completion of a circle, a thread of love stretching across generations. I imagined Jessica, her youth and beauty wrapped in the same silk that had once held all my hopes and dreams. "Of course, my dear," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I would be honored to show it to you. The house will be waiting." After we hung up, I went to the mantelpiece and picked up my wedding photograph. There was Frank, so handsome and earnest in his uniform, his eyes fixed on me. And there I was, a slip of a girl, 19 years old, clutching a bouquet of lilies, and smiling a smile so full of unwritten future, it made my present-day self ache with a sweet, profound nostalgia. I placed the photo back, a new hope blooming in my chest. Maybe the dress wasn't just a memory to be sealed in a box. Maybe it was a legacy, waiting for its next chapter. Saturday arrived with a brilliant, crisp autumn sky. I'd been up since dawn, not with nervous energy, but with a sense of quiet ceremony. I'd baked an apple coffee cake, its cinnamon scent warring with the lemon pledge I'd used on the furniture. When Carol's sedan pulled into the driveway, I felt a flutter in my stomach I hadn't felt in years. "Grandma!" Jessica swept into the house, a whirlwind of perfume and energy, planting a quick, dry kiss on my cheek before her eyes started scanning the living room. "It smells amazing in here. Is that coffee cake?" Carol followed, giving me a proper hug. "Hi, Mom. Don't let her rush you. She's been a little intense since the engagement." "It's the happiest kind of intense," I smiled, leading them into the kitchen. "Coffee's fresh." We made small talk over cake and coffee. Jessica showed me photos on her phone of the ring, the proposal spot, and a dozen different venues she had already pinned on some website. She spoke a language of aesthetics and vibes and color palettes that was foreign to me, but her happiness was universal. Finally, her eyes met mine, sparkling with anticipation. "So, the dress? she asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It's waiting for you, I said, my own excitement bubbling up. I led the way up the stairs, my steps feeling lighter than they had all week. In the attic, I went straight to the old cedar chest. The air was still and smelled of aged wood and mothballs, a scent I found comforting. I knelt, with Carol's help, and unlatched the heavy lid. A collective sigh seemed to escape the chest as I opened it. Oh, wow, it's like a real-life treasure chest, Jessica murmured, peering over my shoulder. I carefully lifted out the layers of protective tissue paper, each crinkle a note in a forgotten melody. First, the veil came into view, a delicate cloud of tulle with tiny hand-stitched flowers along the edge. Then, the dress itself. The silk, a deep ivory now, glowed softly in the dim light. It wasn't a bright modern white, but the color of old pearls or heavy cream. With Carol's assistance, I gently lifted the gown from its 60-year slumber. I held it up. The bodice was simple, with a modest sweetheart neckline framed by the most intricate lace I had ever seen, a gift from my aunt, who had brought it back from Belgium. The long sleeves, also lace, ended in a delicate point over the wrist. Tiny, almost invisible seed pearls were scattered across the bodice, catching the light like trapped dewdrops. The silk skirt fell in a heavy, graceful A-line, unadorned and elegant. "Oh, Mom," Carol breathed, her hand going to her heart. It's even more beautiful than I remembered." I looked at Jessica, my heart in my throat, waiting for her reaction. She was quiet for a long moment, her head tilted. She reached out a tentative finger, not to touch the lace or the pearls, but to pinch the silk of the skirt between her thumb and forefinger. She rubbed the fabric together, her expression unreadable. It wasn't the look of awe I had expected. It was a look of appraisal, of calculation. "The fabric has a good weight," she said finally, her voice analytical. "There's a lot of it. That's good." A small cold knot began to form in my stomach. She wasn't seeing a dress. She was seeing material. "It's a lot to work with," Jessica continued, her gaze sweeping over the dress I was still holding up, a sacred object in my hands. She pulled out her phone again and started swiping through pictures. "Okay, so my vision is kind of a boho chic, rustic glam fusion, you know?" I did not know. I just stood there, the weight of the silk feeling heavier by the second. Carol shot me a nervous glance, a silent plea for me to be patient. "So what I'm thinking," Jessica said, stopping on a photo of a model in a backless, spaghetti-strapped dress, "is we can take the bodice completely off. It's way too stuffy. We'll use some of the skirt fabric to create a new, simple top. Maybe a deep V-neck, definitely backless." The cold knot in my stomach tightened into a fist. "Take the bodice off? But the lace, my Aunt Clara brought it from Brussels." "Oh, we can use the lace for something else," she said brightly, waving a dismissive hand. "Maybe we can cut out some of the little flower parts and glue them onto the shoes or something. That would be a cute little nod to the original." A nod? Like it was some inconvenient relative you had to invite but seat at the back table. I felt Carol's hand on my arm, a gentle pressure. "Jess, honey, your grandmother put a lot of love into this dress." Jessica didn't seem to hear her. Her mind was racing, her creative train hurtling down the tracks. "And the sleeves have to go, obviously. Who wears long sleeves anymore unless it's winter? We're getting married in May. I want to be able to dance. Then the skirt. It's so heavy. We can remove a few layers of the lining to start. I want to add a really high slit, up to the thigh so it's got a little sex appeal. And the color..." She wrinkled her nose, looking at the creamy ivory silk with undisguised distaste. "It's a bit yellow, isn't it? It looks old and musty." The words landed like stones in the quiet attic. Old and musty. The same words a person might use for a forgotten blanket riddled with mildew. She was talking about my dress. The dress Frank had seen me in for the first time as his bride, his eyes shining with tears. The dress my mother had stayed up for 3 nights straight to finish hand-stitching the pearls onto. My voice came out as a strained whisper. "It's not yellow. It's ivory silk. That's its natural color." "Right, well, we can get it professionally dyed," she announced triumphantly, as if she'd solved the world's most complex problem. a brilliant white, or maybe even a very, very pale blush pink. How cool would that be? An upcycled vintage dress in blush pink. I lowered the dress carefully, reverently, and began to fold it. My hands were shaking. I couldn't look at her. I could feel her youthful, unthinking cruelty radiating in the small space. She wasn't just talking about altering a dress. She was talking about erasing it, erasing me, erasing the memory of my love for Frank, rendering it down for parts to use in her trendy, disposable vision. "Jessica," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "what you are describing is not my dress. What you are describing is a completely different dress that you intend to make out of the raw materials of mine." "Well, yeah," she said, smiling, completely missing the point. "It's like a tribute. Your dress, but my style. The best of both worlds." Carol finally stepped in, her voice firm. "Jessica, that's enough. Look at Grandma. You've upset her." Jessica's face fell, not with remorse, but with the frustration of a child whose toy has been threatened. "What? I'm just being creative. I thought she'd be happy I wanted to use it at all. It's just been sitting in a box for like a million years." Old and musty, sitting in a box, the phrases echoed in my head. I finished folding the dress, placed it back in the chest, and closed the lid with a soft, final thud. The sound was a closing door, a final curtain. The hope I had felt just an hour ago had curdled into a sour, painful resolve. The house was deafeningly quiet after they left. Carol had tried to smooth things over with a flurry of apologies on Jessica's behalf, saying she was just overexcited and doesn't think before she speaks. Jessica, for her part, had sulked all the way to the car, clearly feeling that I was the one being unreasonable. The half-eaten coffee cake sat on the counter, a testament to a morning that had started with sweetness and ended in bitterness. I didn't go back to the attic. I didn't need to. The image of the dress was seared into my mind, and beside it, the imagined horror of what Jessica planned to do to it. A deep V-neck, a thigh-high slit, dyed pink. My beautiful, elegant gown, a symbol of a vow made before God and family, turned into a trendy costume for a party. I sank into Frank's old armchair, the one with the worn-down arms where his hands always rested, and let the tears I'd been holding back finally fall. They weren't just tears for the dress. They were tears for the chasm of understanding that lay between my granddaughter and me. To her, history was an inconvenience, a resource to be stripped and repurposed for the fleeting fads of the present. Sentiment was a silly, outdated notion. The dress wasn't a vessel for memory. It was a pile of fabric she was entitled to, a family heirloom she interpreted as her personal property to do with as she pleased. The phrase she'd used, "it was mine," rang in my ears. She already saw it as hers. My ownership, my feelings, my memories, they were just temporary obstacles. I looked at our wedding photo on the mantel. Frank's steady, loving gaze. My youthful joy. That dress was the thread that connected this frail, tired old woman in the armchair to the vibrant girl in the picture. It was a testament to a love that had weathered storms, celebrated triumphs, and endured until death itself. To let Jessica dismember it would be a betrayal of that love. It would be a betrayal of Frank. I sat there for hours as the afternoon sun bled into the soft gray of twilight. I thought about arguing with her, pleading, trying to make her understand. But I knew it would be useless. It would just devolve into a family fight, with Carol trapped in the middle, and I would be painted as the stubborn, selfish old woman who wouldn't share. They would wait, expecting me to come around, to give in, as older people are so often expected to do. But as the evening deepened, a different feeling began to replace the hurt. It was a cold, clear, and unshakable resolve. Jessica thought the dress was old and musty. She thought it was an object of no value except for its parts. Fine. I would show her what value looked like. I would find someone who saw the dress the way I did, the way Frank did. Someone who would see the history, the craftsmanship, the love stitched into every seam. My gaze drifted to a stack of old magazines on the side table. On top was a brochure for the State Historical Museum I'd picked up months ago on a senior's day trip. They had a permanent exhibit on cultural history, including a section on fashion through the decades. An idea, sharp and sudden as a lightning strike, illuminated the gloom in my heart. It was a daring thought, a final thought, but it felt right. It felt like justice. My dress wouldn't be cut up for a boho chic wedding. It wouldn't be dyed pink. It would be preserved. It would be honored. It would be safe from her scissors and her disrespect forever. Monday morning, I woke with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. The grief from the weekend had hardened into determination. I made my coffee, sat at the kitchen table with the State Historical Museum's brochure, and found the number for the main office. My hand trembled slightly as I dialed, not from age, but from the gravity of what I was about to do. State Historical Museum, how may I direct your call? A cheerful, professional voice answered. Hello, I began, my own voice steadier than I expected. I would like to speak to someone in the curatorial department, please. Specifically, someone who handles textiles or historical garments. Of course, that would be Dr. Evelyn Albright. Please hold while I transfer you. The hold music was a soft classical piece, a world away from the pop music that had been blasting from Jessica's phone. I took a deep breath. This was it. There was no turning back. This is Dr. Albright, a new voice said, warm and intelligent. Dr. Albright, my name is Eleanor Vance. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I have a personal item I believe may be of historical interest, and I was considering donating it. Mrs. Vance, we're always interested to hear about potential donations. It's how our collection grows. Please tell me about the item. Her tone was encouraging, patient. She made me feel not like a bother, but like a valued partner in preservation. I began to describe the dress, and as I spoke, the words flowed with a love and precision I hadn't realized I possessed. It is my wedding gown from 1958. It is made of a heavy ivory silk. The bodice and full-length sleeves are overlaid with Belgian lace, hand-carried from Brussels by my aunt in 1957. The bodice is scattered with hand-sewn seed pearls. It is in, I believe, immaculate condition. It has been stored in a cedar chest, wrapped in acid-free paper for over 60 years. There was a moment of silence on the other end, and for a terrifying second, I thought she might not be interested. Then she spoke, and her voice was filled with a new level of professional excitement. Mrs. Vance, that sounds remarkable. Truly. Gowns from that era, especially with documented provenance like the Belgian lace, are increasingly rare to find in such good condition. Most were either altered for later use or fell victim to poor storage. The validation in her voice was like a soothing balm on my wounded heart. She didn't hear old and musty. She heard provenance and good condition. Tell me about its story, Dr. Albright prompted. The history of an object is just as important as the object itself, so I told her. I told her about Frank, a young soldier just home from Korea. I told her about my mother staying up all night to sew the pearls. I told her about our wedding in the little stone church downtown and our 61 years together until he passed. I spoke of a life, not just a dress. That's a beautiful American story, Mrs. Vance, she said softly when I finished. It's exactly the kind of personal history we strive to preserve. It makes the past tangible for future generations. Future generations. The phrase struck me. Jessica was a future generation, and she wanted to destroy it. But a museum would share it with all future generations. Mrs. Vance, would it be possible for me to come and see the gown in person? Dr. Albright asked. I don't want to impose, but based on your description, I am very, very interested. A piece like this could be a cornerstone for a new exhibit we're planning on post-war American life. Yes, I said, a smile finally breaking across my face. It felt triumphant. Yes, that would be wonderful. I would like that very much. We scheduled her visit for Wednesday. As I hung up the phone, I looked over at Frank's empty armchair. I could almost feel his presence, a quiet nod of approval. He had always been a man who valued history and honor. He would have understood. This wasn't an act of revenge, it was an act of preservation, an act of love. Jessica wanted to upcycle my dress. Fine, I was upcycling it too, from a private memory into a public treasure. On Wednesday morning, I didn't bake. The occasion felt too solemn for coffee cake. I simply ensured the house was tidy and the living room was ready. I had brought the dress downstairs, still nestled in its tissue paper, and laid it carefully on the long dining room table. It looked like a sleeping queen. At precisely 10 o'clock, a modest car pulled up, and a woman who had to be doctor. Albright stepped out. She was in her late 40s with kind eyes behind stylish glasses and an air of quiet competence. She carried a large, flat archival box and a portfolio. "Mrs. Vance, I'm Evelyn Albright. It is such a pleasure to meet you." Her handshake was firm and respectful. "Please call me Eleanor. Come in, come in." I led her to the dining room. As her eyes fell upon the dress, laid out in its full glory, she stopped. She didn't say wow or cool. She simply drew in a soft, appreciative breath. She set down her things and, to my surprise, pulled a pair of white cotton gloves from her bag and put them on before approaching the table. The simple gesture spoke volumes. It was a gesture of reverence. "Oh my," she whispered, her gloved fingers hovering just above the lace on the bodice. "The description didn't do it justice. This lacework is extraordinary. And the condition? Eleanor, it's pristine." For the next hour, she examined the gown with the gentle precision of a surgeon. She studied the seams, the drape of the silk, the way the tiny pearls were anchored. She asked me more questions, which I was happy to answer, about the dressmaker, my measurements at the time, the specific church where the wedding took place. Each question was a confirmation that she saw what I saw, not just an old garment, but a historical document. "It represents a very specific moment in time," she explained, her eyes shining with academic passion. "The return to classic femininity after the austerity of the war years, the optimism of the late 50s. This isn't just a dress, Eleanor. It's a time capsule." A time capsule. What a perfect phrase. That's what I wanted it to be, not a pile of scraps for a fleeting fashion trend. Finally, she stepped back from the table. "Eleanor, on behalf of the State Historical Museum, I would be honored to accept this magnificent piece into our permanent collection. We will ensure it is preserved in a climate-controlled environment, cared for by experts, and treated with the respect it so deeply deserves. We will, of course, credit the donation to you and your late husband, Frank Vance, and include your story alongside it." She then opened her portfolio and presented me with the official donation paperwork. I read through the legal language, but my mind was focused on one line: "Donated by Eleanor Vance, in loving memory of her husband, Frank Vance." My hand was steady as I signed my name on the line. As I passed the pen back to her, a profound sense of peace settled over me. It was a letting go, yes, but it wasn't a loss. It was a transfer of stewardship. I was entrusting my most precious memory to hands that understood its worth. Dr. Albright and I then worked together, in a silence that was both comfortable and ceremonial, to carefully fold the dress and place it into the archival box she'd brought. As she closed the lid, I felt a chapter of my life close with it, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that a new one was about to begin. The dress was no longer just mine. It belonged to history now. A week passed. A quiet, peaceful week. I didn't hear from Carol or Jessica, which I assumed was a calculated cooling-off period on their part. They were likely giving me time to get over my sentimentality and come to my senses. Their version of my senses, that is. I imagined them thinking that after a little while, I'd call them up, apologize for being difficult, and tell them to come get the dress. The call came on a Tuesday evening, just as I was sitting down with a book. It was Jessica. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind of tone used to coax a stubborn child. "Grandma Ellie, hi, how are you doing?" "I'm very well, Jessica. Thank you for asking," I replied, my voice calm and even. Good, I'm so glad. Listen, I've been thinking a lot about our conversation last week, and I am so sorry if I came on too strong. I was just so excited, you know? My vision just sort of ran away with me." "I see," I said, offering her nothing more. "Yeah," she continued, a little less certain now. "And I want you to know I'm willing to compromise. We can definitely keep the sleeves, maybe just make them detachable, and we don't have to dye it. We can just get it professionally brightened. I talked to a seamstress, and she said she could work wonders. So, when would be a good time for me to come by and pick it up?" There it was, the breezy assumption, the absolute certainty of her entitlement. She hadn't heard a word I'd said. She had just been waiting for me to fold. I took a sip of my chamomile tea, letting the silence stretch for a moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end, waiting. "Jessica," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "That won't be possible." "Oh, okay. Well, I'm pretty flexible. Is this weekend bad? I could do next week instead." "No, dear, you misunderstand me. It will never be possible to pick up the dress." Another pause. This one was laced with confusion. "What do you mean? Is something wrong with it?" "Not at all," I said, a small, quiet smile touching my lips. "The dress is in perfect condition. It's just no longer in my possession." The silence that followed was so complete, I thought she might have hung up. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head, trying to process a reality that didn't align with her expectations. "What?" she finally choked out. "What are you talking about? Did you give it to Aunt Carol?" "No, dear. I donated it." "Donated it?" Her voice went up an octave, shedding its sweetness and revealing the raw disbelief beneath. "Donated it where? To Goodwill?" "Grandma, what did you do?" "I donated it to the State Historical Museum," I said, enunciating each word clearly. "It is now part of their permanent collection." Dr. Albright, the head curator of textiles, was particularly impressed with the Belgian lace. A strangled sound, half gasp, half shriek, came through the phone. You gave it to a museum? Without asking me? Without even telling me? But it's a family heirloom. It was supposed to be mine." "An heirloom, Jessica, is something of special value handed down through generations," I said, my voice as cool and smooth as polished steel. "Its value lies in its history, not just its fabric. You saw a pile of old material to be cut up. The museum saw its value. I decided to entrust it to the party that would honor it." But, she sputtered, completely undone. "You can't just do that. We can get it back, right? You can call them and tell them you made a mistake." "I didn't make a mistake, Jessica," I said softly. "And the paperwork is signed. The dress is where it belongs now. It will be preserved for everyone to appreciate. I have to go now, dear. My tea is getting cold." I hung up the phone before she could respond, my heart beating a steady, triumphant rhythm. The quiet of my living room felt different now. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. It was victorious. 6 months later, a thick cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. The return address was that of the State Historical Museum. Inside was a formal invitation to the opening of their new exhibit, An American Century, Life, Love, and Style in the Post-War Era. In the corner was a small handwritten note from Dr. Albright. "Eleanor, your piece is the heart of the exhibit. We can't wait for you to see it. Evelyn." I had not spoken to Jessica since our phone call. Carol had called a few times, her voice strained. She tried to explain Jessica's deep hurt and disappointment. I listened politely, but did not apologize. There was nothing to apologize for. A rift had formed in the family, but it was a rift of Jessica's own making, carved out by her own disrespect. I knew, with time, Carol would come around. Jessica, I wasn't so sure, and I found that I was okay with that. On the night of the opening, I wore my best navy blue dress and the pearl necklace Frank had given me for our 25th anniversary. I took a taxi to the museum, feeling a sense of anticipation that was entirely my own. The museum was abuzz with elegantly dressed patrons, the air filled with the clinking of wine glasses and hushed, appreciative conversation. Dr. Albright met me at the entrance, her face glowing. "Eleanor, I'm so glad you could make it. Come with me." She led me through the crowd into the new wing, and there, in the center of the main wall, was my dress. It was breathtaking. It was displayed on a custom mannequin, lit by soft focused spotlights that made the ivory silk gleam and the tiny seed pearls shimmer like a constellation. It wasn't behind glass, but protected by a low velvet rope, allowing people to see the intricate detail up close. It looked regal, important, timeless. It was more beautiful than it had been on my wedding day, because now it was imbued not just with my story, but with the weight of history itself. To the right of the display was a small brass plaque. I stepped closer to read it. Wedding gown, 1958. Silk, Belgian lace, seed pearl. This gown was worn by Eleanor Miller on her wedding day to Frank Vance in Concord, New Hampshire. A symbol of post-war optimism and returning elegance, the gown was hand-finished by the bride's mother. The lace was sourced from Brussels, Belgium, a treasured gift from a relative. Donated by Eleanor Vance, in loving memory of her husband. I read the words, and a slow, deep wave of pure, unadulterated joy washed over me. My eyes welled up, but these were not tears of sadness or anger. They were tears of vindication. Two women standing nearby were admiring the dress. "Can you imagine?" one said to the other. "The craftsmanship. They just don't make things like this anymore. It's a work of art." A work of art. Not old and musty. Not a pile of fabric to be upcycled. I stood there for a long time, just looking. I saw the girl I had been, and the woman I had become. I saw Frank's love and my mother's care. I saw a legacy not destroyed but elevated. Jessica had wanted to wear my dress for one day of fleeting modern fashion. Instead, I had ensured it would stand here, under these lights, telling its story of enduring love and quiet dignity, forever. And in that moment, I knew I had made the perfect choice. I had honored my past by securing its future.